So everyone knows Mega Man, right? Iconic blue bomber, had a bunch of games in different series, and then disappeared for about a decade. Yeah, so even with the series' welcome return with Mega Man 11, it seems like another mainline game isn't exactly in the cards yet, since it's already been 5 years after the game's release. Yeah, Mega Man 11 was released 5 years ago, back in 2018. Time really flies by, I guess. Now, a sudden shift in topics here, but some of you also probably know of these Eurobeat remixes. They're fairly popular and clearly capitalize on the popularity of the iconic Initial D songs you've also probably heard of. You know, Deja Vu, Running in the 90s, those tracks. So the guy who made the Eurobeat remixes of other songs is Dominic Ninmark, and they also post some of the tracks they've worked on for game soundtracks. And this is where it all comes together. Dominic Ninmark also posted a few tracks from this game called Gravity Circuit, and after looking into it, it caught my attention. Gravity Circuit seems to be a game that takes heavy inspiration from the Mega Man series, specifically Mega Man X and Mega Man Zero, and just like that, it was on my radar, and I kept a close eye on it until its release. Now, I'm not a diehard fan of Mega Man or anything. For Mega Man X and Zero, I haven't even played the games past X4, and I haven't played any of the Zero games. But from what I've played and heard of the two series, they've got some exceptional gameplay and a strong formula for fast-paced action platforming. And after the very long absence of both series, I was more than willing to try something similar, but new. And when the game finally released in July last year, I played through the entire thing, and it was great. But I can't just say the game's good and end it there. Although, if that already sold you on the game, then by all means go play it. But otherwise, let's go into further detail here. Just by looking at it, Gravity Circuit's main inspiration is very clear, but there's more to it than just that. What makes Gravity Circuit stand out is the handful of new mechanics it brings to the table, so let's go down the list. You're able to do all the basic actions you'd expect: attack, wall jump, slide, dash, but the hookshot is a new tool that you can get a lot of use out of, and it can do what any hookshot can. It can attach to a ceiling, and you can use it to ascend and reach new places, or swing through the air and across long gaps. But it also has a few offensive uses. It can deal small damage from afar if you want to play things safe, but once you defeat an enemy, it can also be used to pick them up and throw them at the next obstacle. And since throwing an enemy at another enemy causes a one-hit kill, you can repeat the process until you drop the enemy or the level design forces you to drop it to move on. And this gives the game a pretty good flow. I mean, there's always going to be a few stage hazards that cause you to wait or time your movements right, but when it comes to enemies or anything similar, you're able to chain your kills together and get by much faster. It also allows for some clever interactions. You can knock off an enemy's shield, catch it with your hookshot, and throw it back at them. Or maybe you can catch a projectile from an enemy and send it right back. And sure, you can just run past everything, but not only will you take a few hits every now and then, not to mention the handful of mini-bosses, but you also miss out on the money and energy that the enemies drop. Speaking of energy, another important mechanic of Gravity Circuit is your special moves. With the press of a button and with enough energy, you can execute a wide variety of attacks, support moves, or anything in between, depending on what you have equipped and what direction you input. It's like the special moves from Smash Bros, but here, you're able to cancel a special move into another to really rack up the damage. There's a lot of specials you can use once you unlock them, but you can only have 4 equipped at a time, so it's up to you if you want all of them to be attacks or maybe a good variety of moves. Although, most of the specials do lean more towards offensive use, so don't rely on defensive moves too much. The perks follow a similar system, but these are a bit more self-explanatory. You can only have 3 perks equipped, and what you equip can alter or enhance your current abilities. These can range from taking less damage, negating all knockback, or giving yourself a double jump. And there's some really useful stuff to choose from, but I mainly stuck with the double jump and hookshot perk, which extends and powers up your hookshot. Once I had these, there was no going back. The hookshot perk helped a lot for dealing range damage, and the double jump just fits really well for a game like this, you know? And whether or not you have the perks or specials you want, the stages are designed with your base moveset in mind, so you never feel like you need a certain perk or special move. Each stage has their own unique obstacles and gimmicks as usual, and thankfully there's no annoying gimmicks or unfair enemy placements to speak of. There's a good amount of challenge given throughout each level, and if you keep an eye out, there's also a few hidden areas with a hostage to rescue or one of the 8 permanent upgrades. So if you're keen on getting the perks and specials you want, it's best to take your time and look out for those hidden areas. Now, not every stage is perfect, but it's hard to think of any major issues here. I want to say the worst of it would probably be Medley stage. Not because it's terrible or anything, but it's just not as good compared to the rest. Most of the stage is just ascending vertical areas, and while that's fine, it's not as exhilarating or as fun as dashing through the other stages. Not to mention, there's no obstacles that activate to the beat of the music, and I know that's not really an issue, but come on, it's a music-themed stage. That's the only problem I can think of though. It's not even an issue, more of a nitpick more than anything. Even then, all the stages are still full of the energetic action you're probably used to, and with a hookshot, you're given even more options to move through the stage if you know where to use it. It's even better that hazards like bottomless pits and spikes aren't insta-kill anymore, but just take a bunch of health. That's a design choice I can absolutely get behind, and it helps similar games take that same idea. It helps that there aren't any lives either, and there's a bunch of smaller additions that really help to make the game less punishing. You can refill your health and special meter at checkpoints in exchange for money. You can hold onto the edge of platforms, hold the dash button instead of repeatedly pressing it, and there's probably a few more things I'm forgetting. But yeah, Gravity Circuit brings a lot of smaller changes to the formula that helps you focus on getting through the stage quickly. And while this makes the game sound easier, it's just as easy to lose a life if you end up blindly rushing through the game, and that's doubly so for the boss fights. Now these are probably the best parts of the game for me. They're hectic, challenging battles that can easily overwhelm you if you don't react fast enough or get a read on their patterns. But this time around, there's no way to exploit a weakness of any kind, and in the middle of the fight, the bosses will throw out their own special moves. In some way though, your special moves basically are their weakness. It just depends on how much meter you have and whether or not you can land your special attacks. And most of the time, you won't have a lot of specials to use anyways, so you can't entirely rely on spamming them. But if you got the right specials and cancel them into other moves, you can take out a bunch of health real quick. Otherwise, it's all up to your perks and dexterity to finish the fight, which is still pretty tough either way. And if you do end up losing, you're still free to max out your energy again thanks to the checkpoints, so you're not at a disadvantage if you end up dying. All of these bosses are extremely fun to fight against, especially against the endgame bosses, which are expectedly much more difficult, but are also more enjoyable. With all of these elements combined, the game comes together as an amazing platformer with excellent mechanics mixed in to give an immensely satisfying experience. But that's not everything. There's also the music, which I already discussed a bit earlier with Dominic Ninmark as the composer. With his style of music, I think it fits the game's world and aesthetic really well. It's full of energy and properly fits each stage's theme. The story still follows that 8 robots go rogue plot, but with a bit more depth added before and after the game's main events, so there's a bit more potential for a possible sequel, if it ever happens. And the visuals speak for themselves really, a nice retro look that would fit right in with the GBA or DS, and some of the sound effects really sell the style that they're going for. In its entirety, Gravity Circuit is a solid title that sets out to replicate the same strengths from its inspirations, and it does just that and more. The game has left me more than satisfied with what it has to offer, and for any Mega Man fans out there, this is an easy recommendation right off the bat. Even for the average person out there, I think this title is still worth giving a try, and it's definitely a welcoming one with its modern quality of life changes and multiple difficulties. Sure, there are issues, and although I didn't have much of them, I'm sure many others will find their own, but the game's updates are sure to fix most of them. At launch, I would have suggested a few additions, like a dedicated boss rush or a training room, but they've since updated the game to add not only both of those, but other features like a speedrun mode, palettes with unique abilities, and plenty of bug fixes. I actually ran into a glitch with this dog, and it basically broke all of my movement. I guess pets are too much for the Gravity Circuit, but it was fixed pretty quickly, and I found it more amusing than anything. Safe to say that the game and its content is fully complete, and I'd be more than happy to either wait for a major update or a sequel. But if neither happens, I'm glad with what we got here. Major props to the devs, you guys got a great game on your hands. And if you're willing to give this game a shot, it's basically on all platforms for $17 minus Xbox. So sorry Xbox players, maybe next time. But that's all I've got for today. Next I'll be looking at another game that I've kept my eye on, which just released, so I'll get on that as soon as possible. Thank you very much for watching until the end. Do all that YouTube stuff if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all later.